This millionaire's savage act of spite to block their neighbor's view. So, a British millionaire has sparked a bitter feud with neighbors by building a 15-foot wall of hay bales on his estate in an act of revenge. A former police and crime commissioner, Stephen Bett, built the barrier after he planted 95 Leilandi trees, commonly used on property edges. But they were torn down by an unknown person at night. In response, Bett installed a line of giant round bales placed on top of each other close to his boundary, the Sun reports. The giant hay bales cover the entire 60-foot width of his neighbor Maxine Turner's backyard. John Turner, the son and caregiver of Maxine 78, pushed over the hay pile as it blocked his mom's views. Babette later rebuilt it on his $30 million farm, oh my god, in Norfolk, 2 hours northeast of London. Mr. Bett has hundreds of acres of farmland, and he could have put them anywhere, but he chose to put them there. Well, put them here, said Turner, 50. Well, here's the thing, right? If it's on his property, he has the right to put anything he wants on that property, right? It doesn't give someone else the right to take his trees down or to move his hay bales. My mother has multiple sclerosis and macular degeneration, so her eyesight is failing. Looking out on the horses on the meadow was a real pleasure for her, but now all she can see is this wall made of straw. He went on to explain his elderly mom has lived in the home for 40 years and has never seen anything like it. But see, here's the thing, right? They could have simply asked the owner, like, hey, do you mind not putting anything up there? Because, my mother is suffering and she really loves looking at the horses, right? You could have went about it that way. Instead, you, in the night, allegedly, potentially, tore down a whole bunch of trees that someone paid for, and also messed with the hay bales that they also put in after. So until now, the bales always used to be somewhere else on his land, he said, adding he believed Bett put up the bales as an act of spite. Bet 69 said he had only placed the hay bales in that location because he did not want to look at his neighbors barbecuing and putting their washing out, adding that they weren't entitled to the view. Turner, a part-time gardener, said he believed the hay bales had been placed there as Bet was blaming me for cutting down his Lalandi. I am one of the youngest people around here, but I didn't do it, he said, according to a report by the Mirror. He has only placed the bales outside my mother's home and not any of the other neighbors' houses because he wanted to upset us. Drama first erupted when Bet planted a strip of Leilandi trees close to his border to screen his view of 4 homes. The line of thick bushes, which started off as 18-inch high saplings, grew to a height of about 10 feet before 95 of them were hacked down by a mystery attacker on July 2nd. Norfolk police probed criminal damage to the trees, but said all lines of inquiry were exhausted. Now here's the thing. What this guy should have done is gotten like a hidden camera that captures movement at night, right? And he probably could have catched someone messing with the hay bales because someone messed with the hay bales as well after they've already messed with the trees, right? So that's something that he probably should have done and probably should still do, right? Because whoever messed with all that stuff is probably going to mess with your stuff again to mess with you. So, I mean, personally, that's what I would do if I was this millionaire farmer, right? Because the reality, right, is that the way that people went about this is completely wrong, right? Now, technically speaking, I do not know how these people interacted before this whole fiasco, but it seemed like, based off the article, that things only started to get crazy once the millionaires started to plant the trees, right? Because then the neighbors, one of the neighbors at the very least, thought, you know what? I'm not going to let this guy do this on his own property. I'm going to cut them down in the middle of night because I know it is wrong what I am doing, but I'm still going to do it. Okay? Like, that's the thing. If you gotta sneakily do something, you probably know that what you're doing isn't okay, right? Like, this was so poorly handled, and the reality, I probably wouldn't have done hay bales, but it seems like these hay bales basically already existed on his property, and he just simply moved them to where the neighbors are at. So, I mean, I think he probably did what he felt like he needed to do. Let's check out some of the comments. Ooh, geez, a lot of comments. Hope none of those very dry looking hay bales get caught up in this heated feud. Ba, 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 ba. He is so petty. Well, the thing is, I mean, his trees literally got cut down. Brett deserves to be smacked with his governor. Would our bitter, bloody, blooming Brit blow key be? The rich guy is in the right. That's the thing, right? The millionaire in this story is actually legally in the right, even morally in the right, because his trees were initially cut down, right? Now, again, we don't know if the neighbors had asked him beforehand, like, hey, can you not plant anything there? Because I would really love to keep seeing the view, right, of the beautiful horses, right? Doesn't really say anything about that. We don't know if that happened, but at this point, we can only assume that that did not happen based off the information that we have. It's his property, but when he died, he answers to a higher power. I love my neighbors, and so why doesn't invite them over for a meal and end this silly disagreement? The thing is, I mean, he still had property of his that got damaged, right? That's the reality. Excellent job, Mr. Millionaire. Turner obviously took out the trees he planted. Maybe if he wasn't pawned to scum, the two of you could have worked something out, but no. He believes he's above the law and can trespass and damage your property. Kudos, sir. And this is actually a good statement, too, right? Because the thing is, right? If they had gone about this in a different way, maybe something could have happened, right? Maybe if they were on like good terms, right? At the very least, friendly to one another, you might have been able to like invite her over to actually go see the horses in a closer situation, like maybe on the weekends or something. You could have worked with her, been like gracious to her, right? Generous to her. But no, because of this whole fiasco, because his property that he paid for got damaged in the middle of night because it was wrong, because if he got caught doing it, he would have been arrested. There's basically almost no mending now. Oh, the savagery. Who gives a crap about some neighbor dispute across the ocean? Uh, Apparently at least 44 people. It's his property, he can do whatever he wants with his hay. His property, I would have done the same thing. He can do what he wants on his property. If you don't like it, move. Or maybe stop destroying stuff that's not on your property and people won't be vindictive. There's certainly more to the story than what we are reading here. I was prepared to hate on the millionaire, but I find myself sympathetic to him as someone chopped 95 of his trees down. I think stating that he doesn't like a clothesline or a neighboring barbecue is as the reason for the bales is just being more polite, and the bales are response to the destruction of his trees. I don't blame him at all, and I tend to think the guy in this article isn't being as forthcoming as he can be in regards to the vandalism. I surmise he knows much more than he's saying. My first instinct is right. She wanted to enjoy the view, but due to her macular degeneration, she soon won't be able to anyway, so what's the big deal? But I like to think I have too much class for that. It's his property, he paid for it, he has the right to do whatever he wants on it. If you want to buy the property from him, then cough up the money. Why isn't that neighbor trying to help the fellow who had his trees cut down? Something is rotten outside of Denmark today. Tearing down newly planted trees is wrong. There are other more creative ways to impede their growth. Good, it's his land, F your view, good fences make good neighbors. Where's the story? It's his property, and someone already trespassed and destroyed the trees he planted. The landowner is actually being quite restrained in his response to the destruction of all those trees. You gotta keep in mind, like, how much did it cost to plant 95 saplings, right? Probably a good amount. And for them to actually all have been cut down, that's a lot of money, right? Regardless if he's a millionaire, that's still a lot of money. Like, it's probably enough money where the person that cut it down could probably have gotten a prison sentence if they were caught red handed. Sorry, but you don't own the view. Just wait for the wind to be blowing in the direction of the millionaire's house and light the bales on fire, problem solved. Yet, you somehow ignore the fact that the millionaire got effed over originally. He's the actual victim in all of this. Any sane person would be sympathetic to him over questionable guy featured in this article who seems to not be fully forthcoming about what is really going on. Not ignoring it, but there is no evidence this guy was responsible for it. I think the millionaire would be highly upset with this arson. I bet he would retaliate big time. I know I would. And besides, you don't want to hurt the horses. I wasn't really being serious. Setting someone else's property on fire because you're upset with them is a dumb thing to do. Just build a deck higher than the rules and you can enjoy the views again. Now this is actually good and actually good comment. Just build a deck higher than the walls and you can enjoy the views again. Because this is the thing, right? If they could do whatever they want on their property, as in the millionaire can do whatever he wants on his property, so can his neighbors, right? So his neighbors could technically build up this like ever infinity escalating tower patio where they could just basically check this thing out, or the balcony to just check this thing out. And he can also just keep on building hills and hills and haze and hay bales or whatever, or keep on planting more bigger, taller trees and whatever, right? Until one of them just basically gives up, because as long as they do it on their own property, it doesn't really matter. Apparently, he blames low rent for cutting down his trees, which was an act of property destruction effected through trespass. Low rent needs to come clean about the trees. Putting bales of hay up is a good response. They're on his own property and can be taken down once the tree culprit comes forward. Well, that's weird. Interesting. Feel free to give your views on this, your own personal views. The way that I view it is that if I was the millionaire in this situation, I would probably set up a hidden camera to catch whoever is damaging the property. If I was the other people, initially, if I was the son with this mother, the neighbor, like I'm the neighbor, right? The way I initially would have conducted business with this, right, would be to go over there and ask him, hey, do you mind not having anything here until my mom completely loses her vision, which will be probably within like a year or two? Like, do you mind? Right? Because she really loves looking at your horses and all that kind of stuff. It's like one of the few things that brings her joy. Right? Like, that's the way that I would have gone about it. And the reality is, the millionaire farmer guy could either say, like, okay, sure, I'll be willing to do that, or completely reject my, request. And he would have 100% right in rejecting my request, right? And legally speaking, there's probably not anything I could really do. Unless, we were to live in a specific county or something that prevents the blocking of the neighbor's view. But it's very interesting, you know? Like, I feel like a lot of problems like this can be solved, or at the very least, be dealt with in a different way by simply having a conversation with the other person, right? Because even if someone rejects the other person's side, it still could be solved, in a sense, in a more peaceful way, right? Instead of someone potentially committing a crime that could get them tossed into prison. If you want to learn how to get a debt, master your money, go to 14bucks.com.